Lisa Martinez stepped off the transport ship and felt her stomach drop. The Galactic Institute of Advanced Sciences stretched before her like a living mountain made of crystal and light. She had seen pictures, but nothing prepared her for the real thing. The building seemed to breathe with colors that shifted from blue to purple to shades she had no names for. Strange symbols floated in the air around the entrance like glowing butterflies. She pulled her small bag closer and walked toward the main doors. Other beings moved around her, and she tried not to stare. A creature that looked like a walking tree with silver bark glided past. Something with too many arms and eyes like diamonds nodded at her. She nodded back and hoped it was polite, that the inside of the building was even more amazing. The ceiling seemed to go up forever, and equations wrote themselves in light across the walls. Lisa recognized some of the math, but most of it was completely alien. She had studied for years to get here, but now she felt very small and very human. A floating screen appeared in front of her face. Words formed in perfect English, which surprised her. Dr. Lisa Martinez from Earth, please report to Conference Hall 7 for orientation. The screen waited a moment, then added, follow the blue lights. A trail of soft blue lights appeared on the floor. Lisa followed them through hallways filled with students and teachers from dozens of different worlds. She passed a group of beings that looked like they were made of living metal. They were discussing something in a language that sounded like music. Another group had tentacles instead of arms and were writing equations in the air with their fingertips. Conference Hall 7 was huge. Hundreds of seats faced a stage where a being stood waiting. Lisa found an empty seat near the back and sat down. The creature on stage was tall and thin with skin like green leather. Its eyes were large and black and seemed to see everything at once. Welcome new students to the Galactic Institute, the being said in a voice that buzzed like insects. I am Director Calfee, and you are the most promising minds from across known space. The director's eyes swept across the crowd. Most of you come from civilizations with thousands of years of scientific achievement. You represent the best your worlds have to offer. Lisa felt proud for a moment. She had worked so hard to get here. Her research on quantum fields had impressed the selection committee. She was the first human ever chosen for the exchange program. However, Director Calfee continued, we must address certain concerns about academic standards. The director's eyes seemed to look right at Lisa. Some applicants come from worlds with limited scientific development. We will make accommodations, but standards will not be lowered. A murmur went through the crowd. Lisa felt her cheeks burn but kept her face calm. She was pretty sure the director was talking about her and Earth. Students will now meet their assigned mentors, the director announced. These professors will guide your research and evaluate your progress. Names began appearing on screens around the hall. Lisa watched other students stand and walk toward their mentors. She saw excitement on faces as students met professors they had read about in journals. Finally, her name appeared with directions to meet Professor Zektar Vorthane in the main lobby. Lisa made her way back through the building. The main lobby was even busier now, with students and mentors meeting for the first time. She looked around for her assigned professor and spotted a tall insectoid being near the center of the room. He had 4 arms and his head moved in quick, jerky motions as he scanned the crowd. His skin was dark green with silver markings, and his compound eyes reflected the light in thousands of tiny rainbows. Professor Vorthane, Lisa said as she approached. I am Lisa Martinez. The professor turned to look at her. His eyes studied her from head to toe, and she felt like a bug under a microscope. Ah yes, the primitive from Earth, he said loudly. Several nearby conversations stopped. I was wondering what sort of creature would be sent from such an undeveloped world. Lisa felt her face get hot but forced herself to stay calm. I am honored to work with you, Professor. I have read your papers on quantum mechanics and they are brilliant. Professor Vorthane's mandibles clicked together in what might have been laughter. How kind of you to say so, though I doubt you understood more than the basic concepts. He looked at the crowd that was now openly listening. Tell me, Dr. Martinez, what is the highest level of mathematics taught on your little planet? We have developed calculus differential equations and advanced topology among other fields, Lisa replied. She kept her voice steady even though she wanted to run away. Calculus, the professor repeated, and his clicking grew louder. How quaint. My species was solving multidimensional probability matrices when yours was still learning to count on their fingers. More beings gathered to watch the show. I suppose they teach you to add and subtract on Earth. Lisa felt anger rising in her chest, but she pushed it down. Actually, Professor, we have made significant advances in theoretical physics. My doctoral work involved quantum field interactions in curved spacetime. Curved spacetime, Professor Vorthane clicked even louder. Child's play. Every first-year student here learns spacetime manipulation in their basic courses. He gestured to the crowd with one of his 4 arms. Perhaps our human friend should audit some elementary classes before attempting real research. The gathered beings made sounds that Lisa realized was laughter. Different species had different ways of showing amusement, but the meaning was clear. She was being mocked in front of everyone. I am here to learn, Professor Lisa said quietly. I hope I can contribute something useful to the research. Contribute? Professor Vorthan's eyes gleamed. My dear primitive friend, your entire planet's scientific knowledge wouldn't fill a single page of our most basic textbooks. He turned to address the crowd. But we must be patient with lesser species. Perhaps in a few thousand years Earth will develop something approaching real science. The laughter grew louder. Lisa stood perfectly still as the professor continued his performance. She had expected some prejudice, but nothing like this public humiliation. Her dream of contributing to galactic science was turning into a nightmare. I think our human student would benefit from starting in the archives, Professor Vorthane announced. Cataloging old papers might be more suitable to her capabilities than actual research. He looked back at Lisa. Don't worry, my dear. Even the primitive minds can be useful for simple tasks. The crowd began to disperse as the show ended. Lisa stood alone as Professor Vorthane walked away without another word. She had traveled across the galaxy to study at the most prestigious institution in known space. Instead, she found herself assigned to filing papers like a secretary. The worst part was that everyone now knew she was the primitive human who wasn't smart enough for real science. 3 weeks had passed since Lisa's humiliating introduction, and she was deep in the basement archives of the Institute. The air down here smelled old and dusty despite the advanced climate control. Floating shelves stretched up toward the ceiling, filled with research papers from thousands of different worlds. Most were stored as energy patterns in crystal matrices, but the older ones were kept in their original forms. Lisa had been assigned to catalog and digitize historical research papers. It was boring work that any computer could do, but she suspected this was punishment rather than a real job. Every day she came down to the archives and worked alone while other students attended lectures and worked with famous professors on important research. She had developed a system for her work. First, she would scan each paper to create a digital copy. Then she would read through it to write a summary and assign category codes. The work went faster than expected because her human brain seemed good at spotting patterns and connections between different papers. Today she was working on a section of very old Zirithi research papers. The Zirithi were Professor Vorthane's people, and their mathematical notation was complex but elegant. Lisa had learned to read it during her preparation for the exchange program. Though she often had to look up symbols in her translation guide, she picked up a thick paper bound in some kind of metallic cloth. The cover was written in ancient Zirithi script that took her several minutes to translate. Fundamental Limitations of Quantum Communication by graduate student Zektar Vorthane, it read. The date showed it was nearly 900 years old. Lisa stared at the cover. This was Professor Vorthane's doctoral thesis from when he was young. She opened it carefully and began to read. The paper was brilliant even by current standards. Young Vorthane had proven mathematically that faster-than-light communication was impossible. The proof was so complete and elegant that it had shaped galactic physics for centuries. As she read, Lisa began to understand why the professor was so famous. His theorem had closed off an entire area of research by proving it was pointless to try. Every civilization accepted that information could not travel faster than light because Vorthane had proven it was mathematically impossible. But as Lisa worked through the complex equations, something bothered her. The proof was perfect within its assumptions, but those assumptions reflected how Zerathi minds worked. She had learned that different species literally saw reality differently based on how their brains and senses evolved. Zerathi had compound eyes that saw the world as thousands of separate images processed simultaneously. This gave them amazing pattern recognition, but they naturally thought in terms of discrete separate pieces rather than smooth continuous flows. Their mathematics reflected this with elegant but step-by-step logical progressions. Humans were different. Human eyes saw smooth motion and gradual change. This had led to the development of calculus, which was mathematics designed to handle continuous change rather than discrete steps. Lisa realized that Professor Vorthane's proof assumed reality worked in discrete quantum steps because that was how his species naturally perceived the universe. She pulled out her tablet and began working through the equations. What if space and time were not actually made of discrete pieces but were truly continuous as calculus assumed? What if the quantum steps were just how conscious minds perceived reality rather than how reality actually worked? The mathematics became very complex very quickly. Lisa worked for hours filling screen after screen with calculations. She was using calculus and topology in ways that apparently no one had tried before. The Zerathi proof was like a beautiful locked door, and she was trying to find the key. Finally, after many false starts, she found something interesting. If she applied continuous mathematics instead of discrete mathematics to the same physical situation, the proof broke down. There was a solution to faster-than-light communication hidden in the continuous approach that the discrete approach could not see. Lisa checked her work again and again. The calculations seemed correct, but the implications were staggering. If she was right, then Professor Vorthane's famous theorem was wrong. Faster-than-light communication was not impossible. It had just never been approached with the right kind of mathematics. She spent the next several days working through every detail. She looked for errors in her logic or mistakes in her calculations, but could not find any. The continuous mathematical approach revealed possibilities that discrete mathematics missed. It was like looking at the same problem through different eyes and seeing a completely different picture. The more she worked, the more excited she became. This was not just an academic exercise. If her calculations were correct, it would be possible to build actual faster-than-light communication devices. The equations showed her exactly how the physics would work and what kind of technology would be needed. Lisa realized she was sitting on one of the most important discoveries in galactic history. For 9 centuries, every civilization had accepted that faster-than-light communication was impossible because the greatest mathematical mind in Zerathi history had proven it. But that proof was based on assumptions about how reality worked that might be wrong. She thought about Professor Vorthane and how he had humiliated her in front of everyone. He had called her primitive and mocked Earth mathematics as childish. But her primitive human calculus had found something that his advanced discrete mathematics had missed. Lisa knew she had to be careful about what to do next. If she was wrong about this, it would make her humiliation complete. Professor Vorthane would have even more reason to mock human science. But if she was right, it would change everything. Communication across the galaxy could become instant instead of taking years or decades. She decided to double-check her work one more time. She went through every equation and every logical step. She looked up references and checked her understanding of the underlying physics. Everything seemed solid. Her continuous mathematics approach had found a real solution to what was thought to be an impossible problem. The next morning, Lisa requested a meeting with Professor Vorthane. She used the formal academic protocol and asked to present her research findings to her mentor. She expected him to refuse or delay, but surprisingly he agreed to see her that afternoon. Lisa spent the morning preparing her presentation. She organized her calculations and created visual displays that would make her argument clear. She practiced explaining the concepts in simple terms because she knew the professor would look for any excuse to dismiss her work. She was nervous, but also excited. This could be her chance to prove that Earth science was not primitive. Her human mathematical approach had found something that centuries of galactic research had missed. If she could convince Professor Vorthane to take her seriously, it would change everything about her time at the Institute, but she also knew the professor's pride was at stake. She was essentially telling him that his most famous work contained a fundamental error. His reaction might be anger rather than scientific curiosity. Lisa decided that regardless of the consequences, she had to present her findings. Science was about truth, not politics, and the truth was that faster-than-light communication might be possible after all. Lisa stood outside Professor Vorthane's laboratory, holding her tablet with shaking hands. The door was twice as tall as she was and covered with symbols that glowed softly in the dim hallway. She had never been to the professor's private lab before, and the thought of what she was about to do made her stomach twist with fear and excitement. She pressed the door chime and waited. After a moment, the massive door slid open with a soft hiss. Professor Vorthane stood in the doorway, looking down at her with his compound eyes. His forearms were folded across his chest in what she had learned was a gesture of impatience among his people. "Dr. Martinez," he said in his buzzing voice, "I am surprised you requested this meeting. I trust the archival work is not too challenging for your primitive mind." Lisa forced herself to stay calm. "Thank you for seeing me, Professor. I have found something in my research that I believe you should examine." The professor's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. "Research? How grand. Come then. Let us see what Earth science has discovered." He stepped aside and gestured for her to enter. The laboratory was enormous. The ceiling disappeared into darkness high above, and the walls were lined with equipment she could not identify. Holographic displays floated in the air, showing complex equations and three-dimensional models of atomic structures. In the center of the room stood a quantum computer the size of a small building, its crystalline core pulsing with different colors. Professor Vorthane walked to his desk, which was really a platform floating in the air. He settled into a chair designed for his insectoid body and looked at Lisa expectantly. "Well then, Primitive, let us see your great discovery." Lisa activated her tablet and projected her work onto the lab's main display system. The equations appeared in glowing text 6 feet tall. "Professor, I have been studying your doctoral thesis from 900 years ago. The proof that faster than light communication is impossible." Yes," Professor Vorthane said with obvious pride. "My greatest achievement. That work established the fundamental laws that govern all galactic communication systems. It is considered the foundation of modern physics." "Yes, sir," Lisa replied. "But I believe there may be an error in the basic assumptions." The professor's eyes went very still. The clicking of his mandibles stopped completely. "Error, you are suggesting that the greatest minds in the galaxy have been wrong for 9 centuries. That my theorem, which has been verified by thousands of researchers, contains an error that only a primitive human could detect." Lisa's heart was beating so fast she thought it might burst, but she pressed on. "Not an error in logic, Professor. An error in assumptions about how reality works." She changed the display to show her own calculations. "Your proof assumes that space and time exist in discrete quantum units. That reality is made up of separate pieces that can be counted and manipulated individually. This assumption leads naturally to the conclusion that information cannot travel faster than light." Professor Vorthane leaned forward in his chair. "Of course, reality is discrete. Any child knows this. Matter is made of atoms. Energy comes in quanta. Time proceeds in measurable units. This is basic physics." "But what if that is only how conscious minds perceive reality?" Lisa said. "What if the discrete nature is a limitation of observation rather than a fundamental property of the universe itself?" She brought up her continuous mathematics approach. Human mathematics develop differently because our brains process reality as smooth, continuous change rather than discrete steps. We created calculus to handle infinite gradations and seamless transitions between states. The professor stared at the equations on the display. Lisa could see his compound eyes tracking back and forth as he followed her logic. "This calculus of yours is merely an approximation tool," he said finally. "A crude method for minds too simple to grasp true discrete mathematics." Perhaps," Lisa replied. "But when I apply continuous mathematics to your communication theorem, something interesting happens." She ran through her calculations step by step. The proof breaks down. A solution appears that discrete mathematics cannot see. The equations flowed across the display, showing how continuous approaches revealed hidden possibilities in the mathematics. Professor Vorthane followed along, and Lisa could see his confusion growing. The logic was sound even if he disagreed with the underlying assumptions. "Even if your primitive mathematics could produce a theoretical result," he said dismissively, "practical application would be impossible. No civilization has ever achieved faster than light communication because it violates the fundamental structure of spacetime." Lisa smiled for the first time since entering the laboratory. "Actually, Professor, I think it might be possible to build a device that proves the theory." She brought up her final calculations showing the engineering requirements for a faster-than-light communication system. The continuous mathematics approach suggests that consciousness itself plays a role in determining physical reality. If we can create a quantum field that exists in true continuous space rather than discrete space, it should be possible to transmit information instantly across any distance. Professor Vorthane stood up from his chair so quickly that Lisa stepped backward. All four of his arms were moving in agitation, and his compound eyes seemed to be looking in every direction at once. "Impossible," he said loudly. 900 years of scientific advancement cannot be overturned by primitive Earth mathematics. "I am not trying to overturn anything," Lisa said as calmly as she could. "I am simply suggesting that different mathematical approaches might reveal different aspects of reality. Your discrete mathematics shows one picture. Continuous mathematics shows another. Both might be correct from their own perspectives." The professor began pacing around his laboratory. "You are saying that my life's work, my greatest achievement, is based on limited understanding. That centuries of galactic science have missed fundamental truths about the universe." "I am saying that science advances when we look at problems from new angles," Lisa replied. "Your theorem is brilliant within its framework. But what if that framework is only one way of understanding reality?" Professor Vorthane stopped pacing and turned to face her. "Very well, primitive. If you believe your continuous mathematics can accomplish what discrete mathematics proves impossible, then demonstrate it." Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. "Demonstrate it." "Build your device," the professor said with his mandibles clicking rapidly. "If faster-than-light communication is truly possible using your human approach, then prove it. Show the galaxy that Earth mathematics can accomplish what we have failed to achieve for 1,000 years." Lisa realized that she had pushed the professor too far. He was not just challenging her to prove her theory. He was setting her up for spectacular failure. If she could not build a working faster-than-light communication device, her reputation would be completely destroyed. She would be known throughout the galaxy as the arrogant human who thought she could overturn established science, but she also realized that this might be her only chance. Professor Vorthane was giving her access to the laboratory and equipment. She would need to test her theory. If she was right about the mathematics, she could build something that would change the course of galactic civilization. "I accept your challenge, Professor," Lisa said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Give me 6 months, and I will build a working faster-than-light communication device using continuous mathematics principles." Professor Vorthane's compound eyes glittered with what might have been satisfaction. 6 months, then. But when you fail, do not expect mercy from me. I will make sure every being in the galaxy knows that Earth science is as primitive as I have always claimed." Lisa nodded and gathered her materials. As she walked toward the door, she heard the professor's mandibles clicking behind her. She knew. He expected her to fail. He was probably already planning how to use her failure to further humiliate humanity, but Lisa had seen something in the mathematics that gave her hope. The continuous approach had revealed genuine possibilities that discrete thinking missed. If she could translate those mathematical insights into working technology, she would prove that different ways of thinking could lead to different scientific breakthroughs. The real question was whether 6 months would be enough time to build something that had been considered impossible for 9 centuries. Lisa had been working for 5 months and 3 weeks. The laboratory that Professor Vorthane had given her was smaller than his, but still filled with advanced alien technology. She had learned to operate quantum field generators and probability matrix computers that would have seemed like magic back on Earth. Her hands were steady now as she made final adjustments to the device that would either prove her theory or destroy her reputation forever. The machine was not impressive to look at. It consisted of 2 crystalline chambers connected by a web of fiber optic cables and quantum processors. Each chamber was about the size of a briefcase and glowed with soft blue light. Lisa had built it using principles that no one else in the galaxy had ever tried. Instead of discrete quantum mathematics, she had programmed it to operate using continuous field equations. Professor Vorthane entered the laboratory, followed by a small group of other faculty members. Lisa recognized Dr. Kessala from the Threnody Collective, whose species had transparent skin that showed her internal organs. There was also Professor Haline from the Crystalline Worlds, who looked like a living statue made of purple gems. So primitive, Professor Vorthane announced to his colleagues, "Today we will witness the failure of Earth mathematics. Dr. Martinez believes she can achieve faster than light communication using her species' crude computational methods." Lisa looked up from her final preparations. "The device is ready for testing, Professor. I have placed 1 communication unit here in the laboratory. The other unit is currently aboard a research vessel 3 star systems away." Dr. Kessala moved closer to examine the equipment. Her transparent organs pulsed with interest. "The design is unlike anything in our databases." "What theoretical framework guided the construction?" "Continuous mathematics," Lisa replied. "Instead of treating space and time as discrete quantum units, I programmed the device to operate as if reality exists in smooth, unbroken flows. The quantum fields are generated using calculus-based algorithms rather than discrete probability matrices." Professor Helene's crystalline body chimed softly as he spoke. "But continuous mathematics is merely an approximation tool." "How can approximations produce results that precise, discrete calculations cannot achieve?" Lisa activated her display screens to show the underlying mathematics. Different mathematical approaches can reveal different aspects of physical reality. Discrete mathematics shows us one layer of how the universe works. Continuous mathematics shows us another layer. Both are true from their own perspective. "Professor." Vorthan's mandibles clicked with obvious skepticism. "Philosophical speculation will not make your device function. Either information can travel faster than light or it cannot." "My theorem proves it cannot." "Your theorem proves it cannot within discrete mathematical framework," Lisa corrected gently. "But what if that framework is only one way of describing reality? What if consciousness itself influences which mathematical description becomes physically manifest?" She moved to the control panel of her communication device. A continuous approach suggests that quantum fields can exist in states that discrete mathematics cannot describe. If I am right, this device will establish instantaneous communication across interstellar distances. The assembled professors watched as Lisa began the startup sequence. The crystalline chambers began to glow more brightly and the quantum processors hummed with increasing energy. Status displays showed field strength and coherence patterns that climbed toward operational parameters. "Initiating quantum field generation," Lisa announced. The device responded with a sound like singing crystal. Energy patterns danced through the fiber optic networks connecting the 2 chambers, establishing continuous space-time matrix. Professor Vorthane leaned forward despite himself. "The power consumption is enormous. What forces are you attempting to manipulate?" I am creating a quantum field that exists in pure continuous space rather than discrete quantum units, Lisa explained as she monitored the readouts. According to continuous mathematics, such a field should be able to maintain coherence across any distance instantaneously. The device reached full operational status. Lisa's hands moved across the control interfaces with practiced precision, attempting to establish communication link with the research vessel, Kepler Explorer, currently located 47 light-years away. The laboratory fell silent except for the humming of machinery. Lisa typed a simple message into the communication. System, test message 1. Please respond immediately upon receipt. She pressed the transmission key. Nothing happened for several seconds. Professor Vorthane's compound eyes gleamed with satisfaction. As expected, the device has failed. Faster than light communication remains impossible regardless of which primitive mathematics you apply. But then the reply chamber began to glow. Text appeared on Lisa's display screen. Message received. This is Captain Reynolds aboard Kepler Explorer, responding as requested. Communication appears instantaneous from our perspective. The professors stared at the screen in shock. Dr. Casala's transparent organs were pulsing rapidly with excitement. The timestamp shows the reply was sent 47 years in the past according to conventional space-time coordinates. No, Lisa said with growing excitement. The reply was sent now. The continuous quantum field exists outside normal space-time constraints. From the perspective of beings within the field, communication is truly instantaneous regardless of physical distance. Professor Helene's crystalline body was chiming with harmonic frequencies that indicated amazement. Send another message. We must verify this is not some form of error or coincidence. Lisa typed rapidly. This is Dr. Martinez at the Galactic Institute. Please confirm your current stellar coordinates and mission status. She transmitted the message and within seconds received a detailed reply with navigation data and research reports. Professor Vorthane stepped closer to examine the readouts. His compound eyes were tracking the energy flows and quantum signatures with obvious confusion. This is impossible. The mathematics of my theorem are flawless. Information cannot travel faster than light without violating causality. Your mathematics are flawless within discrete framework, Lisa agreed. But continuous mathematics suggests that causality works differently than we assumed. Instead of information traveling through space, it exists simultaneously at all points within the continuous quantum field. She brought up her theoretical models on the display screens. Consciousness creates the mathematical framework that determines which aspects of reality become manifest. Discrete thinking creates discrete reality with speed of light limitations. Continuous thinking creates continuous reality with instantaneous connections. Dr. Casala was studying the data flows with intense interest. The implications are staggering. If communication can be instantaneous, then travel might also be possible using similar principles. Trade routes could be revolutionized, Professor Helene added. Scientific collaboration could advance exponentially when researchers can communicate instantly across galactic distances. Lisa sent several more test messages to verify the system was working consistently. Each time the reply came back instantly, despite the enormous distance involved. The device was performing exactly as her continuous mathematics had predicted. Professor Vorthane stood quietly watching the demonstration. Finally, he spoke in a voice that was much quieter than usual. The calculations appear to be correct. The device functions as you predicted. But this contradicts 9 centuries of established physics. It does not contradict anything, Lisa replied. It simply reveals that physical reality is more complex than any single mathematical approach can fully describe. Your discrete mathematics revealed important truths about the universe. Continuous mathematics reveals different but equally valid truths. The professor's mandibles were clicking slowly as he processed the implications. If different mathematical frameworks produce different physical results, then science is far more subjective than we believed. The observer truly does influence the observed in ways we never imagined. Lisa nodded. Every species brings unique mathematical perspectives, based on how their consciousness evolved. Humans developed continuous mathematics because we perceive smooth motion and gradual change. Other species develop discrete mathematics because they perceive reality as separate quantized units. And both perceptions create valid physical realities, Dr. Casala said with wonder. The universe is not fixed but responds to how conscious minds choose to understand it. Professor Vorthane looked at Lisa with something that might have been respect in his compound eyes. Dr. Martinez, I owe you an apology. Your human mathematics have revealed possibilities that our discrete thinking could not perceive. You have expanded our understanding of reality itself. Lisa felt a surge of triumph mixed with relief. Science advances fastest when different perspectives work together, Professor. Your discrete mathematics and human continuous mathematics each reveal important aspects of how the universe functions. The device continued to hum quietly as messages flowed instantly across interstellar space. Lisa knew that everything had changed. Faster-than-light communication was no longer impossible. The galaxy would never be the same. 6 months after the successful test, Lisa stood before the largest gathering of scientists in galactic history. The Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Institute had been expanded to accommodate representatives from over 200 different worlds. Beings of every imaginable shape and size filled the vast space while millions more watched through instantaneous communication links that used her technology. Lisa wore the formal robes of a senior research fellow, which had been granted to her the week before. The promotion came with access to unlimited research resources and a laboratory staff of 30 graduate students from across the galaxy. More importantly, it came with respect from colleagues who had once dismissed her as primitive. Professor Vorthane sat in the front row looking uncomfortable in his ceremonial academic garments. The past months had been difficult for him as he struggled to accept that his life's work contained fundamental limitations. But he had shown remarkable scientific integrity by publicly supporting Lisa's research even though it challenged his own theories. Director Calthee stepped to the podium to introduce the presentation. Fellow researchers, we gather today to witness a revolution in our understanding of reality itself. Dr. Lisa Martinez of Earth will demonstrate how human mathematical approaches have opened new frontiers in physics that we never imagined possible. Lisa walked to the center of the stage where a smaller version of her communication device waited. This model was designed for portability and had been replicated on dozens of worlds across the galaxy. The original impossible dream of instantaneous communication had become routine technology in just half a year. Honored colleagues, Lisa began 6 months ago, most of you believed that faster-than-light communication was mathematically impossible. This belief was based on 9 centuries of discrete mathematical analysis that produced elegant and convincing proofs. She activated the display systems to show Professor Vorthane's original theorem. These proofs were correct within their mathematical framework, but they assumed that physical reality operates according to discrete quantum mechanics. What we have learned is that reality is far more flexible than we previously understood. The audience listened with fascination as Lisa explained how different mathematical approaches could produce different physical outcomes. She showed how continuous mathematics revealed possibilities that discrete mathematics missed and how consciousness itself played a role in determining which mathematical description became manifest. The key insight, Lisa continued, was recognizing that every species develops mathematics based on how their consciousness evolved to perceive reality. Humans see continuous motion and gradual change, so we developed calculus and topology. The Zirithi see discrete separate units, so they developed quantum probability matrices. Both approaches reveal valid aspects of how the universe functions. She demonstrated the communication device by establishing contact with research stations across the galaxy. Messages flowed instantly between worlds that were thousands of light years apart. The audience watched in amazement as scientific data and personal greetings crossed interstellar space without delay. Dr. Casala stood to ask a question. Dr. Martinez, what other impossible things might become possible if we apply different mathematical perspectives to established physical laws? Lisa smiled at the question she had been hoping someone would ask. That is exactly what we are beginning to explore. My research team is currently investigating whether continuous mathematics might also enable faster-than-light travel. Early results suggest that consciousness-based reality manipulation could revolutionize transportation just as it has revolutionized communication. A murmur of excitement ran through the assembly. The implications were staggering. If travel could become as instantaneous as communication, the galaxy would effectively shrink to the size of a single solar system. Trade and cultural exchange would accelerate beyond anything previously imagined. Professor Haling raised a crystalline appendage. How do we reconcile these new discoveries with centuries of established scientific theory? Are we to abandon everything? We thought we knew about physics. Not abandon, Lisa replied. Expand. Every mathematical framework that has been developed reveals genuine truths about reality. Discrete mathematics shows us important aspects of how the universe works. Continuous mathematics shows us different but equally valid aspects. As we incorporate mathematical approaches from more species, we will develop an increasingly complete understanding of reality. She brought up a complex diagram showing how different species' mathematical perspectives could be combined. The Threnody excel at probability calculations because their transparent biology allows them to see internal processes directly. The crystalline worlds developed harmonic mathematics because their silicon-based minds naturally process resonance frequencies. Each species contributes unique insights based on their evolutionary perspective. The presentation continued for 2 hours as Lisa demonstrated various applications of her technology and answered questions from the audience. The enthusiasm was infectious as researchers realized that entire new fields of study were opening. Before them, near the end, Professor Vorthane stood to address the assembly. Colleagues, I must confess that Dr. Martinez's discoveries initially challenged my scientific pride. For 9 centuries, my theorem was considered the definitive proof that faster-than-light communication was impossible. Learning that this proof had limitations was difficult to accept. His compound eyes swept across the audience. But this experience has taught me that true scientific advancement requires intellectual humility. We must remain open to new perspectives even when they challenge our most fundamental assumptions. Dr. Martinez has shown us that wisdom can emerge from the most unexpected sources. The professor turned to look at Lisa. When she first arrived at this institute, I dismissed her as primitive because her mathematics differed from our established approaches. I failed to recognize that different does not mean inferior. Her human perspective revealed truths that centuries of our discrete thinking had missed. Lisa felt tears forming in her eyes as the professor continued. Science is not about proving the superiority of one approach over another. It is about understanding truth in all its complexity. Dr. Martinez has reminded us that truth is too vast for any single perspective to grasp completely. The applause that followed was thunderous. Beings from hundreds of different worlds showed their appreciation in dozens of different ways. Some clapped with multiple appendages while others created harmonic sounds or flashed colored lights. The diversity of the response reminded Lisa of why she loved working in this galactic community. After the formal presentation ended, hundreds of researchers approached Lisa with collaboration proposals. Universities from across known space wanted to establish exchange programs with Earth. Governments offered funding for expanded research into consciousness-based physics. Technology companies bid for manufacturing rights to her communication devices. But the conversation that meant the most to Lisa came from a young Zirathi graduate student who approached her nervously after the crowd had thinned. Dr. Martinez, the student said in the buzzing voice of his species, I have been studying your continuous mathematics approaches. I think my discrete perspective combined with your continuous methods might reveal new possibilities neither approach could achieve alone. Lisa smiled and shook the student's clawed hand. I would be honored to work with you. Collaboration between different mathematical perspectives is exactly how we will continue advancing our understanding of the universe. As the assembly hall emptied, Lisa looked around at the beings who had once dismissed her as primitive. Now they treated her as a colleague and sought her insights on their own research projects. But more importantly, they had learned to value different perspectives rather than immediately dismissing unfamiliar approaches. The revolution in galactic science was just beginning. Lisa's communication technology had proven that impossible things could become possible when consciousness itself was recognized as a fundamental force in shaping physical reality. As more species contributed their unique mathematical perspectives, the boundaries of what was considered impossible would continue to expand. Standing alone on the stage where she had once been humiliated, Lisa realized that her greatest contribution was not the technology itself, but the demonstration that scientific progress required intellectual diversity. The galaxy was vast enough to contain many different ways of understanding truth, and humanity had finally earned its place as a contributor to that understanding. The stars beyond the great dome of the assembly hall seemed closer now, connected by instantaneous communication links that had once been thought impossible. Lisa knew that soon they might be connected by instantaneous travel as well. The universe was revealing its secrets to those wise enough to approach it from multiple perspectives and humble enough to learn from each other.